What makes a good teacher? If they're not just instructors, what are the qualities of a good teacher?
If you give me a PhD, there's someone I can put in front of a class that's got a lot of very specialist subject knowledge. You give me a good human being, there's someone I can put in front of a class that will be respected and is respectful.
You can't test that in 30 minutes or 60 minutes or 90 minutes. How do you test that to ensure they're good? And then how do you onboard them? And how do you deploy it? I mean, if you were to build it from scratch, how would you do it?
So if I was starting from absolute scratch, so we do need a base of an education. We've got to build from something.
And age is not a function of that.
No, the issue with secondary schools though is the age difference between your oldest students
and the teacher is
and the
correct.
teacher.
Why is the teacher with subject knowledge even relevant in tomorrow's teaching world?
That's a good point. So tomorrow's teaching world, the teacher is a facilitator.
Is the current education system broken? And how can it be fixed? Join me in this discussion with Carl Lander, the principal of the Karachi Grammar School and the chairperson of the Cambridge Schools Association, on how the education system can be evolved and what we need to do to fix it. Carl Lander, how are you?
Excellent, thanks. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for taking the time out. And as the chair of the Cambridge Schools community, and as the principal of the Karachi Grammar School, I figured that you would be the right person to speak to about education, right? And so, I've been thinking a lot about education, especially since we use a lot of AI in our work.
Yeah.
And the more I find myself reliant on AI, the more it makes me think about, is the current education system for our kids set up for them to leverage what's about to happen when it comes to knowledge, when it comes to learning, when it comes to comprehension? Because we no longer need to retain. We need to access and we need to comprehend. And so it really started to get interesting for me, but I was like, I'm not the expert. Let me get the expert on the subject. So walk me through how you see the education system needing to evolve.
Yeah, not sure I'm the expert, but I do have some mad ramblings. So, education is dynamic and it's constantly changing. Most of us that are involved in education are very aware of that. It can change from year to year, let alone, a decade to a decade. And we're now on the precipice of a huge change, which is AI and this putting to bed the idea of rote learning and knowledge, a knowledge-centric education system. Right. And I think most educators are now aware that a knowledge-centered education system has had its time, and now we need to move on and prepare the kids for the demands that they're going to be placed on them in the 21st, 22nd, 23rd centuries. And that is a very different environment, a very different scene to what we're currently being faced. It's going to be very interesting to see how AI develops further, right, and how not just schools, because the schools are end users. You've got the examination bodies that design the exams, which literally then dictate the curriculum you're teaching. Right. And you've got governments who are asking for a set curriculum. Right. So there's a whole number of people that need to get this right so that us as end users can deliver what it is the children need.
So if you've got so many players in this that need to get this right, can it ever be gotten right?
Yes, I think it can.
Because there's too many special interests, there's too many old minds, and like you said, there's so many different stakeholders in this, but the affectees have no say. It's the kids that are receiving the education, right? They have no contribution or say in this. And obviously they're younger and so on, so their parents can. But how do you drive that change? And if there is change to be made, what does that change look like?
Well, that's the exciting thing that brought me to Pakistan, really. You're exactly right. If we were in the UK and I had some crazy novel idea about a different education system. And you can look these up, the Montessori system, the Steiner-Waldorf system, completely different way of educating the children, but a very similar objective. If we're in the UK, yeah, they would be blocked. Things are very traditional. Whereas we're not in the UK, we're in Pakistan. And actually there are some key players, whether that's over at the IBCC or whether it's in STEDA, that are changing things. We're very fortunate that within Pakistan, the Sindh government is sort of 4 or 5 steps ahead of most people in education.
Really?
And I'm included, oh yes, I'm including the UK in that.
You're the first person who's praised the Sindh government.
Yeah,
that I've come across.
We're
except for the Sindh government themselves.
Yeah. No. I've been genuinely surprised. So, for example, one of the first things to get right is that the teachers know how to teach. And in many countries that there is a drought of talent.
Is anyone teaching the teachers in Pakistan?
They will be shortly. So there are a number of institutions. Obviously, there's one glowing light, and that's the Notre Dame Institute of Education. You can spot one of their teachers a mile away. But I mean a mile away, because the teachers understand the knowledge transfer. Okay, they get that they're a lecturer, but they're also there as a policeman, as a lawyer, as a nurse, as a friend, as an uncle. There's a whole role that a teacher plays that doesn't necessarily get taught. And when I meet teachers that are very capable in the classroom and have that 360 holistic view of education, they've always been Notre Dame. And recently I bumped into the staff of the IOBM. And they were sounding the same, which perplexed me, because it's unusual here that I've met people that sound like this. And they were Notre Dame as well. They were graduates of Notre Dame that have then gone on to do their PhDs in various places and have come into academia. So it is about to change. The individuals at STEDA are fully aware of this. And what they're trying to do at the moment is standardize all the BEds. So, you go to some universities and it's very academic and theoretical.
Right.
You go to other universities and it's tongue-in-cheek, do you even turn up?
Right.
And there are other universities like Notre Dame, IOBM, to name but a few, that are delivering good quality BEds. So what STEDA's trying to do is standardize all of that. And this is happening in Sindh, not in Pakistan. And they'll standardize it.
Sindh only.
Yeah. And so last year, they introduced the teaching license. So the idea was that at least if they've got a BEd and a teaching license, the school as an employer has a better idea that they're capable of doing the job. Bear in mind that there are some big traditional schools where your teachers, there's only 14% of the teaching workforce that are qualified teachers.
14%? 86% are not qualified teachers.
And of that 86%, how many of them actually have degrees in the subjects that they're supposedly teaching? And so that's across the whole of Pakistan. And that's the ecosystem that we're involved in. And you have to do your best you can with the ecosystem. So into this mix have come STEDA, who said, okay, we're going to standardize BEds. And you know what?
BEds being Bachelor of Education.
Yes. And now they're starting to standardize it, and the better institutions are starting to rise to the top.
So when you say standardize, you mean the curriculum of that
right.
4-year degree?
Yeah. And the modules, the information that they're taught. So teachers are now realizing that they're not just instructors.
So what makes a good teacher? If they're not just instructors, what are the qualities of a good teacher? Okay,
this is really simple. And I've said this to various boards before. If you give me a PhD, there's someone I can put in front of a class that's got a lot of very specialist subject knowledge. You give me a good human being, there's someone I can put in front of a class that will be respected and is respectful. I can train them to be a teacher. If they don't have those instincts, those abilities to be a good human being, the empathy, the understanding, the care, if they don't have that, how am I going to turn them into a teacher? It doesn't matter how clever they are or how many PhDs they have behind their name. If they're not a good human, that's where I'm struggling. So I would say what makes a good teacher, that exact same thing that makes a good human being. And if we can start with a good human being and give them the subject specialist knowledge, and then tease out those innate qualities that they have that make them a good human being, tease them out and develop them, then in the classroom we have a good human being who cares for the students, who generally wants what's best for them, is interested in teaching them, and won't teach them the way they want to learn. They'll teach the way the kids need to be taught. Not necessarily, how I learn isn't necessarily how you'll learn. But if I'm a good human being, I'll understand that, because I'll have empathy, I'll have sympathy. I'll understand that the 20 children in front of me are all individuals, all with their own histories. And so I'm not going to stand there and say, look, I like it best when we memorize the times table in maths. That's how I did it. That's how you're going to do it. So I guess it's taking those good human beings and developing them.
To be good teachers. But how does a school, so let's take a fictional school in Karachi, and say that they want to build a pool of good teachers, starting with exactly that model of good human beings. What is the testing or onboarding or recruiting process for that? What does that look like? Like, how do you find those good human beings? How do you test in a limited environment? Because teaching is it's a test of patience also, day in and day out, same kids, kids can be rowdy, whatever, right? You can't test that in 30 minutes or 60 minutes or 90 minutes. How do you test that to ensure they're good? And then how do you onboard them? And how do you deploy? I mean, if you were to build it from scratch, how would you do it?
So if I was starting from absolute scratch, so we do need a base of an education. We've got to build from something.
So you'd need a minimum of a bachelor's degree.
A minimum of a bachelor's degree.
Okay, so now we've restricted the pool to, let's say, a smaller group of people.
Yeah. And from that bachelor's degree, we'd want to do a demo lesson.
So pause 1 second. With the bachelor's degree, do they need to have a certain years or age? Do they need to be of a certain age or above?
No.
So they can be 22?
Yes. Some of the best teachers I've met might be young and enthusiastic. Some of them are old and wise.
So it's a combination.
Yeah. There is no blueprint to the perfect lesson or the perfect teacher. I've known teachers follow the rule books of setting up objectives, starting the lesson with a warm-up, and then changing their activities to appeal to different learning styles every 10 minutes. And then they'll do a plenary. So they have the whole scaffolding of a lesson there. And they're doing everything right that's in the textbook, but it's still not a great lesson. And then you'll have someone come in who does nothing that's in the nothing that's in the scaffolding, and the kids learn a huge amount. So there is no exact blueprint. There are many ways to skin a cat.
And age is not a function of that.
No. The issue with secondary schools, though, is the age difference between your oldest students
and the teachers.
And the teacher. And that's where lines can be blurred, because the older students see themselves as young adults.
Yeah.
And those young adults fresh out of university don't have the experience to understand that, it's a professional role you're in.
So secondary school, high school, you would look at age as a concern, but for the others you wouldn't.
Yeah.
So now you've got a bachelor's degree. You've distinguished between age. What do you do next?
Okay, so it's an assessment of them as a person.
And how do you assess that?
Some places do it through psychometric testing. I'm not a fan of that at all.
Why?
Because it's a guide, and it's how you as a professional interpret the data. And without too much training, you can be literal on the data and pigeonhole someone for an answer that they thought about for 3 seconds for something that they did. Whereas if you use it as a guide, they might never do that same answer or that same action again.
Right.
So I think the person that's handling the testing needs to be aware of it. So just to say psychometric testing and we'll do this is dangerous, because the people assessing that test might not understand the all the dimensions that are in it, and therefore
makes sense.
Typecast people that is quite unfair.
And it's typically a reflection of your state of mind on that point at that point in time. Yeah. And so if it's a range, like you said, because you might be in a very different state, so you might respond slightly differently.
Yeah.
So got it. So psychometric you would not do, but then how do you test if someone is a good human being in a limited environment?
So it's giving them demo lessons. It's allowing them to interact with the youngsters. People are very good at putting on a false face as well. You know, if you need a job, you'll be
Exactly.
the person I'm looking for. However, that starts to fade with time. And that's why in a lot of countries, a teacher training placement is a year-long placement. Because after 3 or 4 months, that mask starts to slip.
Fatigue sets in,
Yeah.
you know, the mask is gone. You don't have to impress anyone.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a probation period at work, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's the same concept. But for schooling, it would be difficult because if I'm trying to recruit, no one's going to wait that long for a position. They will take the first position they get.
Yeah.
You know, so realistically, if psychometric isn't the best option,
Right.
but we're limited for time.
But this is where the training institutions doing their job plays an even bigger part. So I know, for example, if someone comes to me from the UK with a BEd or a PGCE, I know roughly where the education they've had. If they then have their QTS, which is their teacher's license, I know they've had to meet a whole range of standards. So my baseline is already there. Ideally, I want great teachers. But satisfactory teachers is the gamble, because an alternative to that is I'm just greeted with a pool of 20 candidates and I've somehow got to filter them into the best one.
And which is what you're doing today.
Yeah. So which is why I am so respectful of the work that Steda are doing, in that those people are really trying to put a standard and then produce a teacher's license. So at least
Steda
it's a
is
skill.
the Sind
Sind
Technical Education or Training and Education Development Authority.
department. Yeah, they're responsible for teacher training, BEds, licensing of teacher training.
And so you feel that when they do this work that they're doing, that will set a minimum standard
Yeah.
for a teacher's quality.
That's right. It'll set the bar at least. And you know, we can discuss how they're assessing the teachers.
But that gives you more of a qualification on their teaching ability. That the human part is still.
But as
How are they
Steda-
assessing that?
But as Steda evolves, so exactly, you're right. So currently, to be a licensed teacher here, you'd go and sit a written exam, knowledge-centric education system. And if you pass that exam, you're a teacher. Where are all the human qualities? You're exactly right. And they are aware of it. I've spoken to the ladies at Durbin that were very much a part of developing this teacher license. I've spoken to Dr. Kieran at the IOBM, who was part of it. So they are acutely aware of that. But we've got to start somewhere. And then the idea is to take that written exam and actually make it more portfolio based. So then it's not an exam that gives you a small window on someone's knowledge. Actually, it's going to be a portfolio that gives you a whole vision of what that person is about. Because in that portfolio is the objective, the observations, not by one person, not by a boss, but a number of observations by their peers, by their line managers. And then you start to get a bit better picture of what this teacher is about.
So as you're responding, the way it's shaping out, and I'll kind of sort of rehash it, is you identify as someone with the right education, the BEd or whatever. You identify using, let's say, a training institute, a provincial or federal or whatever, someone who's come through that institute with a license, right? So the license demonstrates that they have a baseline ability.
Yeah.
You then bring them into a, let's say, whether you do psychometric or not is a choice. If you use psychometric, don't be too fixated on the responses. But if you don't, run them for like a demo day. So a teacher comes in and does a demo day, goes into class, teaches different lectures for the full day, and you just observe the way they handle it.
Yeah.
And that should be it.
Yeah. So because time is always critical, that's it. But only at the first point of recruitment. Then we've got the probation period. And during that probation period, there needs to be further training, because these are people that have come out and are qualified teachers, and someone said, yes, you can teach. But as an institution, a school, any school, has the responsibility to develop those teachers.
So how long should the probation period be?
A year.
A year long?
Yeah.
And who's doing that today?
So there are a number of countries across the world where that's
in
standard.
Pakistan.
In Pakistan, KGS is doing it, where we have year probations. The more norm is 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
But there's a fuller. It's not just a probation where they're proving themselves. The institution also has to get them up to speed.
But is it the probation a year long for KGS? Or?
Yes, it is.
It is.
Yeah.
So you're observed during that 1 year, and are you trained also during that 1 year?
Yeah, there's an incredible amount of CPD, continuing professional development, that goes in. So at the moment, for example, at our school, we've teamed up with the Commonwealth Trust.
Right.
And that's for all the nations that are in the Commonwealth or were in the Commonwealth. And the Trust provides professional development for teachers that covers things from AI and how to use your telephone in class, to how you cope with behavior, how do you deal with conflictive parents, emotional parents, how do you deal with changing subject knowledge. And if you're a biology teacher, genetics that I was taught in school back in 90s is not the genetics that is out there now. And so how do you cope with that? So the Commonwealth Trust have all these series of modules that our teachers are put through. Other schools have other examples. I could use Beacon House as an example of a group of schools who have the Beacon House University, and they'll team up with the University of London and they'll do a PGCE. Again, this is all the same. We're not reinventing the wheel. The PGCE is you build up a portfolio. That portfolio is made through a series of modules of how you handle angry parents, how do you deal with perhaps more indignant students who really have a block to learning or don't want to learn, or there are special education needs at play or emotional behavioral needs at play.
But these sound more like training modules around sort of your disposition as a teacher rather than the knowledge, the functional knowledge of the subject you're teaching.
Excellent. That's right. Which is the world we're walking into. Because in my pocket, I have more subject knowledge than the best chemistry professors at Oxford. So, I can access, or Gemini can access, much quicker than any of they could.
Why is the teacher with subject knowledge even relevant in tomorrow's teaching world?
That's a good point. So tomorrow's teaching world, the teacher is a facilitator.
Correct.
But they must still have a degree of subject knowledge because there are some value judgments to be made. Is that knowledge valuable? Is it valid? Is it dated? So if you choose electrons, I don't know if you did chemistry when you were at school, but you have the Rutherford, the plum pudding model, and everyone's like, these are electrons. And that model's brilliant, but as a chemist, we now know we've moved on from that model. And then we have this orbit idea of things orbiting around the nucleus. And that's brilliant, but we know we've moved on. But I don't need to be a quantum mechanic PhD physicist. What I do need is a good understanding of the basic sciences so that I understand where we are and then I can impart that knowledge. Or when AI gives me the knowledge, I can teach the kids how to check that it's validated. I can then say, based on my experience, and let's face it, an undergraduate degree isn't terribly advanced. It's just 3 or 4 years at uni where you do a number of introductory subjects and a few specialist ones. So it's not terribly advanced, but we're expecting that basic knowledge so you can make qualitative decisions. So if you get handed the curriculum from Pearson EdXL or the Aga Khan board or whatever scheme of work you're handed, you're able to interpret it. And when the kids come up with the answers, you're able to identify whether they are in the right ballpark, whether they're making the right progress.
So a good human being with the ability to access functional knowledge, with basic functional knowledge and the ability to access more using technology, and an ability to transfer that knowledge and facilitate a discussion to a certain level of depth depending on the grade. That's basically what a teacher should do. Now, this teacher, and I'm going to transition into the types of education systems we have around us, right? This teacher can work in any education system. They can work in the Cambridge education system. They can work in the American education system. There's the IB education system. I'm not the expert. I'm just counting the ones I know. And I believe there's IBCC. There's another one.
There's the international primary curriculum, international middle curriculum.
Walk me through and then there's obviously the one in Pakistan, which is the inter and metric education system, right? Can you walk me through sort of the high-level differences between, let's pick the most popular, which is your Cambridge, your Intermetric, the American system, and maybe IB? What's the difference? Because if the teacher is the same, what is the difference between these systems?
Okay, so number one, definitely 100%, a good teacher should be able to walk into any system and be able to deliver. And actually, I'm going to go a step further now. A good teacher, so if you're a good geography teacher, and you're good at your geography teacher, you should be able to walk into a history lesson and the kids not know that you're not a history teacher, because 60% of what you're doing is teaching. The subject knowledge, well, you're covering maybe maybe one of your colleagues has got ill. So might not deliver it as well as the history teacher, but the kids wouldn't be aware. So the skills of the teacher are transferable, not just across curriculum styles, but also across subjects. Because if a teacher is teaching a year 7 child or a year 5 child maths, if you've been to university, you should be able to teach an 11-year-old maths. So as long as you're 1 or 2 steps ahead of the kid, then they should not know that you're not a maths. But anyway, sorry, I digress. So the different systems, that there's largely 5 different educational philosophies and methodologies that exist. And they go, so you might identify some of these. So at the very top, you've got a knowledge-centric system that relies on examination of the knowledge and your ability to be able to remember and recall all that knowledge.
That's the one I went to.
So I think being from England, that's the one I'm most familiar with. And in England, 90% of the schools are that way, and the government pushes that way, and that's the status quo. But education is a rainbow, and so that system is just one colour. And then if we come down to another system, you might say that the emphasis needs to be on a rounded child, where they should have exposure to community service. They should understand that subjects aren't individual islands, but there are threads between them. So global warming will never be solved by a physicist, nor will it be solved by a chemist, nor will it be solved by a geologist. It will be solved by someone who's working as part of that group.
Actually, it'll be solved by a social scientist potentially, because people throw trash, and why do they throw trash and don't waste and, sort of do, composting and recycling. But then you can link it to, let's say, someone in the physics and materials space. Why don't we use more recyclable material that is cheaper to use? So yes, I get it. So
it's going to come from multidisciplinary approaches.
So this is more of the rounded child approach.
Yeah.
So not the knowledge retention approach.
Yeah. So now you've hit the middle, and if you look at the IB, the International Baccalaureate, it was initially designed way back by someone who I admire immensely. There was 5 or 6 people that pulled it together, and Kurt Hahn was one of those people. And he saw education as being much more than just delivering subject. So he put community service into it. He put the idea of critical thinking and thinking skills, which was outside subjects. You develop the critical thinking and thinking skills. He personally developed the idea of outward bounds. So you take kids out of their classroom into the big outside, and we learn about the science,
right,
but in nature, where it is applied. So they had all these ideas, and these are going back many, many years. And that was what the IB formed. And then when you come down to a little bit further down, you have systems that, educational system that says knowledge is important, but citizenship and your place in the society and the community is as important. And then when you look at the South American education systems, you sort of understand why the South American countries are the way they are. So, for example, something happens in South America, and we'll see on the news that people are in the streets demonstrating. And to someone who doesn't quite understand that, they're like, oh, look, the people are on the streets again. Oh, there's protests and riots. That's part of their education system. You as a human being have the responsibility to make the changes.
Right.
In England, someone makes it for me higher up there. My job is to remember and learn stuff. In the South American system, it's as much about citizenship and being a part of that community. So they emphasize that.
Where does the American system fit in?
The Americans, well, I've got to be careful here. So I have been at an American school, the American International School of Bolivia. Where does it fit in? It's like the, can I say this?
Yeah.
It's like the British system. It's like the British system, but doesn't quite go to that same level of knowledge and advancement in the subject.
Okay, so let me kind of break that down. So you're saying it doesn't go to the level of sharing that level of detail of knowledge in a subject with the student.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even go to the level of accessing or requiring the student to retain or test the retention of that knowledge.
Yeah, it's a little more holistic. So as a consequence of their education system, a university degree, undergraduate in America, is 4 or 5 years. In the UK, it's 3 years. Because the system in the UK is designed to have someone who is already at an advanced level in their study come in.
But I'll flip that. The total years are the same because you have 13 years in the Cambridge education system, because you've got O levels till 11 and then 12 and 13 is A levels.
Yeah.
In the American, you have 12 of high school and 4 of college. You still end up with
it's the same number, which is why A levels are called advanced study. They're equivalent to the first year of university, but the idea is you do them in school.
So someone going to the Cambridge system and doing A levels and then going to an American college is actually wasting a year.
Not necessarily. So university in Miami will give you credit for your A levels.
Right.
So you generally skip the first year.
Right.
If you've got A-level maths, you get to skip Maths 101. So it's not necessarily a wasted year.
So so now you've got the American, which is not going in as deep functionally, and is not requiring you to retain as much as the British system.
Yeah, but they're very similar, very, very, very similar.
IB is completely different.
IB is dramatically different, starting from the younger children.
And where does the system in Pakistan stack up? Whatever the system is.
It's well, because of your history, the colonial history, Pakistan is at a little disadvantage in that it's very much like the British system.
So it's retention of knowledge.
Yeah, but the British system has undergone various changes in the last 15 years.
In Britain, but not in Pakistan.
But in Pakistan, we still, perhaps it's the colonial history and that footprint that's upon us.
So we're stuck in an education system. And this is the inter and metric and the FSC and the HSC.
They're all very... It's rote learning. If you study Pakistan studies with the Aga Khan board, the Sindh board, it's a huge curriculum. And it's learning for rote.
Memorization.
Yeah, and does it need to be? It's the children of the future. Do they really need to memorize all those dates because they've got them? What they need to do is access those dates and identify the good and the bad,
the links, the threads,
and how we can learn from that. How I can apply what was learned there to other fields.
And so it's rote learning, built on a very similar education system to the British system. So it sounds like more or less the British system was the baseline for most systems.
Yeah.
However, if the IB was something so new, why hasn't it taken off? Is it because in the history of education over time, it's only been less than 100 years since it came about and education is much older as a subject? Or is there another reason that IB hasn't taken off?
So when those I can't remember if it was 5 or 7 people got together and put the IB together. The idea was to end world wars by education, with education. And that was their noble claim.
That's not going to happen.
So
none of the military defense contractors, the big, Yeah.
So before I came here, I was in another country. And that other country professed to have IB schools. So when that country went to war with their neighbour, the IB school, because it's an IB school, said, okay, what are our neighbours' thoughts on this? That little old lady that lives up on the hill in that land that's next to ours, what's her view of this? How would she feel about our troops coming in there? And of course, when you start to think like that, you realise it's not just they're bad and we're good and we'll show them. You realise that the families on that side of the border and the families on this side of the border are equally affected. You know, I'm sure that little old lady that lived up in the hills, high up in the Karabakh, couldn't care less about an immigration policy or who owned the diamond mines. What she cared about was, is her crop going to be ready? How are carrots growing? How are potatoes growing? That's what she cares about. And that's what all the families on this side of the border really care about. And the whole idea of the IB is to develop that empathy, to be able to view the world and understand there are many perspectives. So when you can understand the world from someone else's perspectives, we can just start to maybe have a solution. Because if you're saying something's black and I'm saying something's white, but I can understand why you think it's black and that actually it's not really white, but it's not black either. Then we can find and work out a way together through dialogue, and sort of the IB pushed that. Now you put the IB into the modern world where nations across the world are flag waving. It just doesn't go with that. So you're already trying to put in an education system that is doomed to failure because you don't want your children to think differently.
And in addition to that, now add technology to it. Algorithms feed you more of what you are consuming already, right? So algorithms are not out there to sort of democratically expose you to a variety of different things.
Yeah.
Right? So if I watch kittens all day long, I'm only going to be shown cats and kittens.
Yeah.
Right? The IB doesn't prepare us for a world where I'm a cat and kitten person and you're a dog and puppy person, right? Yeah. That's because what you're saying is that the IB system would be like, well, there's kangaroos and giraffes and snakes and there's all these other animals. It's not just two animals in the world. Yeah. You know?
And each one of those might be right.
And each one of those might be right. But with social media, that doesn't work. So does that mean the IB system is a failed system for that reason? Because of the way the world is set up? Yeah. The flag waving nations, the objectives, and everyone's got sort of whatever. And then the way algorithms on social platforms are set up to feed you more of what you're consuming to retain your attention longer. Yeah.
I think in an ideal world, the IB system would be phenomenal for us all to do. But unfortunately, the system has humans in it. And we all have cognitive bias. We all prefer certain ways. And we're not all adept at seeing the world from other people's points of view. And as a consequence, I'm sure someone, I think it was Karl Marx, said, communism is the ideal state were it not for humans. Yeah. We are the problem.
So now we've got the perfect teacher. We have an assessment of a couple of the more popular education systems. Beyond this, are there any systems that you are aware of that are completely different from the ones that you've mentioned?
Yeah, there's some phenomenal systems out there. Yeah. So there are people in Karachi will be familiar with the Montessori primary system, which is more about children developing at their pace and then being responsible for their choices. So rather than saying, today we're going to play with sand, it's what would you like to play with today? So the teacher is more fixed on facilitating.
How does that evolve if I was to do it with an 18-year-old? Because that 18-year-old is never going to want to study anyways.
It's very difficult. So we're in a world that wants people in pigeonholes. And a person that's much freer in thinking and much more autonomous is a problem. I've worked in the UK at prep schools, and the prep school specialised in taking children from different educational backgrounds and getting them ready for the educational background that's going to greet them that most of the world follows, that degree at a university. Because it's wonderful to say, I don't really agree with this. I want to do this today. But we've got to have some way of measuring you. because the universities need a measurement, the employer needs a measurement, and
they need to be able to compare you to the millions of others that are applying for the same thing.
Back in the 70s, there was a huge push for Steiner education, Steiner Waldorf, which was very different education. It's very much where the children are much more autonomous, much freer. The trouble is, where's your assessment points? Where's the rigor? And it is so different to the English system that even recently when the UK government announced free schools. So the idea of free schools was that a community group could come together and form a school that meets their needs. That school might be a sports academy. Say someone like me comes in with a group of parents and says, we want to educate the kids, but we want to give them all the benefits of a healthy lifestyle and give them what sport can. So sports academies would open. Some parents would say, actually, we like the military and the structure that provides and the self-discipline. So we want our school to be a more structured military. So there was all these free schools open up with very different
objectives
and characteristics. Some religious schools, some of them opened up as Waldorf schools, and Ofsted went in to inspect them. Now, Ofsted used to be a check-in list. Do you do this? It's about measuring kids and measuring. And that's not what the Waldorf system is about. The Waldorf system is about nurturing and cultivating.
But what kind of child or human is that system producing versus the one the IB produces versus the one Cambridge or versus the one American produces?
Yeah.
Like if I was to describe the human, what is the difference between, and assuming all four of the systems are the perfect systems, delivered, let's say, somewhere at one of the best schools, what's the difference in the human characteristics?
So you would see perhaps people from the Waldorf Steiner system being much more independent, much more creative. That creative art is developed in the child and developed in the teenager, whereas in a more traditional system like Cambridge, that creativity's not crushed, that's unfair, but it's certainly subdued because you've got a syllabus to get through. Learn this. But what about if, no time for that. You've got to get through your O-levels and then you've got to get through your A-levels.
So one will produce inventors and one will produce CEOs.
Yeah, so as a bad example, perhaps a Steiner system would produce the next Dyson vacuum cleaner. It'd be the next Dyson. Thinking different, they can be creative. Whereas perhaps the Cambridge system will produce someone who's going to be a tenured professor and maybe advance some aspect of pharmacology.
Right.
And the IB perhaps is going to be this amazing leader, maybe a political leader, maybe a leader of commerce that understands how to get teams together. They can communicate well. They've got empathy. They can solve problems. And for me, that's the whole point of life. It's the diversity.
And the American system is similar to the
UK. I'm bunching that in with the UK.
With the UK system,
it's similar enough. It's slightly more flexible, more holistic. Has a taint about, your extracurricular, you're developing your passions. So it does have that.
Which the UK system doesn't have as much.
It's there, but not as much.
So how do you assess, these are the four systems, how do you assess the knowledge and the progress of a child in each of these four? How is that assessment process different?
That's beautiful, because in that statement, you tell me the education system you came through. How do you assess the knowledge? Why do I want to assess knowledge? Why is that important? So how do I assess the child and their development? So knowledge is important, yes, if you're from a knowledge-centric system. But if you were from South America, my assessment is, how are you progressing to do what is right and not what everyone else is doing? How are you doing to stand up and say, this is just and that is unjust?
What would I don't even understand that you could test that.
But you can't. But it's a development of the child. So if this is an exaggerated criticism of the British system.
Right.
I produce a child that gets 15 O-levels at A-star, does 4 A-levels at A-star, and then they go and sell drugs on the street and destroy everyone's life. Are we successful as an educational institution? Well, he got all A stars. He's brilliant. I've done a good job as a school. No?
Yeah.
And clearly I haven't, because he's on the street selling drugs to other people and destroying their lives. So there's a much broader aspect to what is education. And this is those different systems that they're trying to approach.
So what should we be assessing for? Like if the purpose of assessment, now you've really confused me. Because I'm like, what were we being assessed for anyways?
Why are we assessing?
Yeah,
I can remember all the letters of the periodic table and tell you the electronic configuration of every single element.
Like,
brilliant. The trouble is, I'm not paying my taxes and I pay everything by cash.
Yeah.
But on top of that, I'm going to stand in the street and complain that the Singh government isn't cleaning the streets. But I'm not paying my taxes. But anyway, I'm making lots of money on the side. So is that a good education? The education system has failed me as a civilian, as a citizen. It's failed me. I know the periodic table. Well done. I don't understand that if I don't pay my taxes, then we don't have the services I want to make the better schools for tomorrow. And the politicians that perhaps don't service me as a civilian because they're lining their own pockets also have been failed by the education system. So it's like, what is assessment? But I'll just jump you onto a subject, because what is assessment is something.
What is assessment? And now that a question I should have been asked you is, what should we assess? Because I still am haunted by differential equations. To this day, I don't know what purpose has solving a differential equation served. What purpose has it served? Why didn't the system teach me compounding in finance? Because I would have, at the age of 8, learned compounding. I would have invested all of my ED, and over the last 40 years or 30 years or whatever, I would have been sitting on at least $100,000 just based on ED compounded at 10% returns. But no one taught me compounding until I learned it in finance when I was 26.
It's too late.
It's too late. I mean, I've already lost a lot of time that way. But the differential equation I can solve. I don't need it.
Yeah, there's it is what are we learning, and why are we learning it? And there's huge questions there.
So what should we assess? Like, if every year a child is progressing let's say before someone starts working to earn a living and be independent in society, right? So at the end of the day, what is the education serving, right? You gave a great example. The example of the 96 paper written by...
They're chaired by Jacques Delors.
Correct. You were talking about the 4 pillars of what a good education system should be.
So if we go on to that, this is back in 96. So back in 96, we recognized that rote learning is a thing of the past. We recognized that studying non-stop for so many years and then sitting a big exam, it doesn't necessarily mean you're being educated. It means you can memorize things, or you've learned that differential equation. Well done. But it's not that big a part. So in 1996, the UN put together this huge body of people across all sorts of specialisms, and they said, what are we assessing? And it was chaired by Jacques Delors, who I think was the European president at the time. And they came up after all this study with saying, okay, knowledge is important. Let's not get away from knowledge. So one of those columns is we need to assess knowledge, and that's easy to do. What's 1 and 1? It's 2, passed. You've assessed the knowledge. It's easy. The other thing was we need to assess the to-do, the to-do, because it's great knowing 1 and 1 is 2, but what is the to-do of that? So perhaps as a salesman, I'm selling a number of cars, or I need to know the application of it. So in a school context, the to-do is, we'll teach the theory. Can they do that theory and apply and solve a problem using that theory in maths? Or in science, we might say, here's the practical. You've done the theory. How are we going to extract this sulfate from the magnesium? Can you solve it? So that's the to-do. The skills, the applied learning. That's really important, especially in today's world. You get paid for your objectives accomplished. So you've got to know and to do. And then think, but hang on a minute, because to be is tremendously important. That's you as a person, because I might have all the knowledge in the world, but if I'm a horrendous human being, what use is that? I might be the best economist and financier Pakistan has seen, but if I'm a corrupt minister, what use is that? So there's the to be, how am I using that knowledge? How am I being in the classroom? Am I working with my teammates?
Right.
Are we trying to go for a common good? When the teacher set a deadline, am I trying to keep that deadline? Have I got some discipline? So the to be is much more nebulous, but we have created rubrics to help teachers mark on the to be. And then the final column was to decide, the correct decision making. If I use football as an example, anyone can have the skills of Messi. I can teach you the skills of Messi. I can show you what Ronaldo does. We can break it down and I can have you do those skills. The decision making is what we don't have. What skill you choose to do at the right point in time, or can you complete that skill under immense amounts of pressure? So that decision making process, making the right decisions at the right time, when to listen, when to speak.
So to know, to apply, to be, and to do. Those are the four.
To know, to do, to be, to decide.
To know, to do, to be, to decide.
Yeah.
Got it. And that makes complete sense. Which of the systems that we just went over comes closest to this framework?
Okay.
Everyone does the to know part.
They all can be applied. So for example, in the UK, it's very much knowledge based curriculum.
So the to know is covered.
Yeah, the to know is good. However, in the school I was working at, the headmaster decided that they were going to have a domain that was called industry and attitude, and then he graded. And teachers would grade based on your industry and attitude. So that's almost the to be.
Right.
So many schools in the UK are sort of progressing towards that naturally.
What about the one that you're sort of leading right now?
Within Pakistan, the Cambridge system's very much centered on knowledge. Knowledge.
So the to be is missing?
It's there in a degree. They're all there, but to a lesser extent. So the to know is certainly 80%. The to do, that's unfair. The to know is probably 70%. The to do, perhaps 20%. The to be and to decide, 5% each.
Do you think that we have the to decide in our society? Do you think we're producing critical decision makers, reasoners, thinkers?
I think we're trying to at KGS. We are trying to. That is part of what we do. Creating the critical thinkers,
but does that
challenges.
Is that happening because it's a product of the curriculum of the school, or is it happening because because there's another component to this system, right? The Cambridge system, the component of the tuitions, which the American system, let's say, doesn't have.
Yeah.
And I think schools in schools in Pakistan mostly have this problem. Outside of Pakistan, the Cambridge system doesn't have that much of a problem, where you go to school for, let's say, 6 hours, but then after school, you're running from one tuition to another for every subject that you should have been taught in school anyways.
Yeah.
And so if there is a to be and to decide learning that's taking place, to me, it's coming from the kid running from one tuition to the other, because they're actually, it's self-learning, not just of the content.
Yeah.
But hey, I have 30 minutes to go from tuition A to tuition B. I should grab a snack, otherwise I'm going to feel hungry. I should take a nap in the car, otherwise I'll be tired. I should catch up on my Instagram during this time, otherwise the teacher will be like this. So the decision there's so many micro decisions that take place because you're constantly moving around, right? You're running from one place to another. That's where I feel the decide is coming. It's not coming from the curriculum.
Yeah.
And so why do we need that? If these systems are offering, okay, fine, I understand the to know part is where the focus is. Why does the student in a current system, in the Pakistani system, need to run after school to acquire the knowledge that they should have acquired in school?
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
I don't think there's an easy answer for that. It's not just Pakistan.
It is not.
It's not. It's in London. It was a terrible problem. So every.
But it's not a problem in the American system. I've
Right.
not seen this in high schools.
But the metrics aren't as clear in the American system. And this, perhaps you've hit the nail on the head there. So in the American system, the teacher says you're an A. You're an A. In the English system, the Cambridge system, the teacher says you're an A. That's good. What does your certificate say? So the certificate is the metric. That's the one we all have to live up to. So the learning doesn't have the value. The certificate has the value. In other systems, your high school diploma is issued by the school. So your high school diploma from Florida is no way aligned to the high school diploma in Idaho. No way at all. They're completely different high school diplomas, different curriculums. The teachers are marking them. But then the child, the universities recognise that, and you have an extra year at university where you're going to level the children roughly up.
And so you're saying that because this certificate, which is the O and A level certificate, is standard around the world. So whether you went to Eton or Harrow, or you went to, whatever Cambridge school in Multan, that certificate for both is equal?
Yeah, because it's an A-star. The Cambridge A-star. A-star in history at Cambridge is an A-star in history at Cambridge. It's a certificate that says you are A-star.
But you see, the biggest problem with that is exactly that. Like the kid who's coming from, let's say, Multan with an A-star in history, and the kid coming from Harrow or Eton with an A-star in history, they're nowhere near each other when it comes to...
Yeah, but in the metric that we're using...
So we're measuring the wrong thing then.
Yeah. So back to assessment, what is it we're measuring? This is the whole issue that I think education is coming to wrangle with now, is what is the assessment? And so back in 96, they looked at this and said, you need to be assessing
these four things.
A broader range. A number of countries took those up instantly. Phenomenal. Extra work for the teacher, because no longer can you just read a whole essay and go, A.
Yeah, because the biggest challenge I find, as an employer, right, one of the biggest challenges that I observe is that most individuals from an average education, let's say school, Cambridge, or let's say the intermetric system, are missing the to decide ability.
Yeah.
And here's why. In our culture, in South Asian culture, when do we have to decide? If I was a kid, all the decisions were taken care of by my parents, including what degree I chose, which college I went to, who I married, when I had a child. And I'm talking about a traditional family, maybe, on average. Again, I'm giving you averages, right? When I had that child, how I lived, who's making the meals, the micro decisions have been taken away from you. It's done for you, right? There are no micro decisions taking place. In an American system, you do everything.
Yeah.
There are all types of micro decisions constantly that you're taking. And so the decision making there is of a better quality because they've done so many.
Yeah.
Because they're independent.
Yeah.
So even though we have a assessment of retention of information, we're producing a candidate that is unable to perform at work. Because if we're hiring someone to do stuff, go do it.
Yeah.
Be independent and decide. No, you decide for me.
Yeah.
You tell me what I need to do.
But this is the what is so awesome about today and this point in history, now where we are in education. Because if AI hadn't come along, we could have this conversation forever and those exams would continue forever. But AI's come along. And so if I go back to 2020, so it's 5 years, it feels like yesterday, but 5 years ago, a paper got leaked in Colombia. An IB paper got leaked. And they were like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And the reaction of the IB was like, well, it's only one paper. And it was assessing this bit. And actually, we've got 75% of the assessment from this bit. It's all right, nullify the paper, it's not an issue. When people started using AI to do exams for the first time, the IB system stood back and said, well, that's okay, let them use it for their exams.
Really?
Let them use it. What's it helping them? They're getting the knowledge. Yeah. our assessment isn't just the knowledge. It's
Yeah.
how you use it,
Yeah.
your decision making, what you're applying.
Yeah.
It's how you're going to work together to do it. It's how you're presenting it and your communication skills. The assessment is much, much broader. And as a consequence, the fact that, so it wasn't an issue. AI can be used. They came out and said, you'll use AI. It's a tool, use it. Whereas when AI came out in the UK system for Edexcel, for Cambridge, OCR, whichever exam board you're using for IGCSEs and A-levels, AI comes out, no phones in the exam hall because they'll cheat. Right, no phones. No smartwatches in the exam hall. Okay, no smartwatches. Are those Google glasses you've got on, or are they normal glasses? You tell me. Okay, no glasses for anyone. How's that fair? Okay, contact lenses. Right. Does that contact lens have a chip in? At what stage? Because AI is solving the problem for us. Because we're only looking at assessment of knowledge, there is the issue. Whereas other systems are not having that. So we're now at the crossroads where we're saying, what are we assessing? And I'm really pleased to say that in Pakistan, this is out there as well. I've been to 2 conferences this year where that very thing has been the theme.
Really?
Yeah. What is it we're assessing? So the first one was at IOBM, and the second one was staged by Synergy Cambridge at KGS.
So how far behind is Pakistan and the education spectrum on let's say, if this is a global challenge that we're talking about, right? And all of these challenges are because of what's happening with AI and the assessment model is more knowledge based. How far behind is Pakistan?
I would say it's not.
It's not.
Really? If I took you right now, right this minute, to a school in London or a school in Houston that was following similar curriculums, they'd be almost the same. We're not behind. The whole world is now facing this together, and the biggest concern is when people think they can throw huge statements at it to make a difference. So the government of the UEA recently said, right, we're going to teach AI in schools. That already tells me they don't understand what AI is. Because, AI is a tool you use for a billion tasks and more. Yeah. And they're going to teach it. For what are you going to teach it? Yep. Now, what you should be saying is, we're going to allow AI use and we're going to map it into every subject area. Yeah. So the children are using it for their essays. But they're not. They're using it to write the essays. But then we're going to assess them on, do they understand where the primary source material was? How valid is this argument that AI has put together? Is it substantiated? Where's the evidence come from? Yeah. So it's the bigger skills. And it is happening. It is happening. It's very, very slow, but it is happening.
Is it easier to drive that? So if let's say the challenge is there in, let's say, the more progressive Western world and here, right? Is it easier to drive change here, or is it easier to drive change there? Because I'm assuming the stakeholders are equally challenging in both places.
I personally would say, and that's the excitement of being here in Pakistan, that we can drive it here because there is a thirst for change, that there is that genuine interest in engaging with this change.
Really?
I don't know if it's come from a perception that Pakistan is behind, so we need to catch up, which it isn't, but let's pretend it is, so we keep everyone on board and we keep pushing. But
there is a thirst for change. You feel that?
Definitely.
And where do you see that? Do you see that in government, in schools? Do you see that with parents? Do you see which one of the stakeholders in this ecosystem?
Okay, easily identified with the parents, 110%.
More so than in your other, let's say, assignments?
Totally, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, completely. With the parents at different schools that I've been to as well. So there's not just my role at KGS, there's my role at Synergy, and I get to experience the schools across the bridge and other schools as well.
Right.
So it is an insight. There is that hunger. It's not just about the piece of paper. Yes, there is a tuition culture, there is a paper culture that we've got to get the certificate. But actually, there's something happening in society. And I've seen it here more than I've seen it elsewhere. And so you've got the parents and the kids, yes. The other people that I find really energizing is that new generation that's come into a layer of government and that are making changes. And that is really exciting to see.
So the younger bureaucrats.
Yeah. So, hand on heart, I can say those at the IBCC that are trying to standardize all the different examining boards across Pakistan. And they're trying to standardize it so that we have a standardized curriculum. So that's the first place to start. When we're all teaching the same things and we all agree what we should be teaching, then we can really start to get to grips with it. So they're doing a phenomenal job. The people at Stedder that are working with the teachers are doing a great job. And this is being supported by Sindh government. So I can't say whether it's in the Punjab or other regions. I can't say that. I don't have experience of that. But certainly in Sindh, that there is an energy and there is a vibe that things are changing. So I would say as a teacher that I'm more excited about the potential here than I would be if I was teaching in England.
Right.
Because you're governed by so much conservatism and so much push for the status quo, which exists here. But there is an energy for change as well. And maybe, I don't know if that's the entrepreneur spirit that's famous in Sindh.
Right.
I don't know if it's that, but there is that push. So when I talk about what should our curriculum look like, and everyone says, okay, knowledge is important, but what about critical thinking? What about creativity? What about collaboration? What about communication? These are things that are going to hold you in good stead for that employer tomorrow. Yeah. Because they need a collaborator, they need a team player, they need all of those skills from creativity to communication. Those skills need to be embedded along with AI within the curriculum.
Right.
And in the 2 conferences I've been at, I've listened to speakers from the University of Education up in Lahore. I've listened to speakers from Islamabad. I've been part of panels that have discussed this. That is all out there. And the exciting time will come very soon, hopefully, when they put this into the curriculum. And maybe someone at a ministerial level says, right, okay, just like we did back in the 80s and we mapped IT into subjects and 90s, we're now going to map these I'll call them C skills, the communication, the collaboration, the creativity, critical thinking, and others. We'll map them in to the curriculum. So knowledge is one part of it. And then you come back to saying, well, what are we assessing? Now you're starting to assess knowledge, tick, communication skills. We've got a metric that we can start to measure now, because communication skills is what we wanted to do. Collaboration. Well, now we've identified it, we can start to measure it. Creativity. We never measure creativity. You know, that science lesson or that physics lesson, where was the creativity? Well, we're not measuring it. Now we're saying, let's have it. So it's on that, if we use the UN columns, that to be, creativity fits quite nicely in with it. You know, to be, did you think there was an alternative, or did you just do what everyone else did? No, I came up with this crazy idea from left field. Did it work? No. That's good though, because now we know something else that doesn't work. It reduces the amount of things that we will find that will work.
What if, is there a way, so rather than waiting for, let's say, the largest stakeholders, right? Is there a way for that assessment on those four criteria to be done by schools on their own? Because the knowledge is being assessed by the Cambridge system anyways, right? So let's leave that aside.
Yeah.
But every school can independently decide to assess on the other 3.
100%.
So then what stops a school like, let's say, the one that you're at, from making that change?
So, there are schools around the globe that have done this. So I use the example, I'll go back to the UK and say Bede School. So Bede School it's a HMC school, which means it's one of the very old traditional schools.
And the HMC schools are the...
Headmasters Conference. So,
and these are the prestigious schools from around the world.
Yeah, the Eton, the Harrows, the Rugby. So in the HMC, Bede are there. And Bede last year said, we're binning IGCSEs, O-levels and A-levels. We're binning them. And what we're going to give our students is a leavers certificate, a bit like the American system. We're going to give you a leavers certificate that will detail your subjects and your grades, but it'll also have a more holistic approach. So no more are we racing towards just getting an A star in this subject with this external examining body. Actually, you've got a whole curriculum to complete to become a whole person. And they've done it. Did universities accept it? Well, of course they did.
Who made that decision at that school?
That was the head and the board making those decisions.
So the head being, let's say, the person in your position.
Yeah.
And then the board is the board that basically runs the institution.
Yeah.
How does the board...
Trustees.
The trustees. Do those boards change over time, or is it the same people that stick around? Like, how does that work for that? Because if you're trying to build that decision-making process here at the schools in this country, some of the schools are privately owned, privately run.
Yeah.
You know, some schools are family businesses. They are actually businesses. And some schools are, let's say, trusts, or some schools are like, you know, sort of reporting into the church or the bishop, or some schools are the St. Joseph's and the St. Patrick's,
the convents.
The convents, exactly. How does that decision making take place for each one of them?
It's very, very eclectic. So St. Bede's, very traditional school. Their board, 3 or 4 members would have been there 8 or 9 years. 3 or 4 members would be changing. So you have the fresh blood and the old hands.
So they're working hand in hand.
Yeah.
So they have a system of bringing in new blood into their managerial and sort of decision-making architecture.
So you have that, and then you have a head who's been there a lot of years, and is listened to and respected by the board. And then as their expert in education, he's gone to them and said, look, what are we assessing? Just like this discussion today, you have the open room discussion, and then people sit there and go, God, yeah, what are we assessing?
Right.
What do we want? What's best for the kids? Do we want what's best for the kids, or do we want them to have pretty paper and go to the?
Right.
Let's do what's best for them. And that's quite a courageous decision for Bede's to take. There are other schools that have done it. So Gordon's Town, way back in the 70s, when Kurt Hahn was there, as a headmaster, he'd just escaped Germany, and he'd gone to Gordon's Town. So this is way before. Sorry, it's not the 70s. That's how old I feel. Oh my goodness. So before the outbreak of the Second World War,
that's a big difference in time.
Yeah, 30. That's only 30 years.
Actually, that's true. It is.
Yeah, it's not a lot. It's the same difference as the difference in time between now and 2000.
Yeah, that's true.
That's frightening, isn't it? But anyway, so before the outbreak of the war, Kurt Hahn's gone up to Gordon's Town. He's there and he's doing a great job. And he's looked at it and said, do you know what? This curriculum is very academic based, which is good. But our children are missing community service. We're missing outdoor learning. We're missing, and he's gone through it. And so he's been able to implement it in Gordon's Town, a bastion of UK education up in Scotland.
Right.
Very traditional. So he did achieve it.
But he was an outsider bringing in fresh perspective.
Yeah.
So does it require that? Like, because you're giving 2 interesting examples. One where the headmaster was around for a long time and was considered the expert, but was in the system a long time and yet proposed a change.
Yeah.
In another system, a fresh perspective from an outsider says, let's propose a change.
Yeah.
But the change has been proposed, right?
Yeah.
Someone has to then sort of think about that change.
Yeah.
Do you need people with a fresh perspective who need to think about it? Or are people with, let's say, lots of experience who've been around a long time, are they sufficient for that?
It depends. It's all politics, isn't it? I think the unifying factor...
So there is a politics play that comes into.
But the unifying factor for Bede's and Gordon's Town is they were moments of change. And those institutions wanted to change. And they have a head that's willing to lead that change. So I think you need those 2. One, it's a wanting to change, and then having a leader willing to change. And where those 2 meet, then we can achieve things.
And the wanting to change stems from an understanding that where we are today is not going to help us given where the world is headed.
No, exactly.
Right? Or something is off.
Yeah, it's waking up in the morning and going, do you know what? What we've always done and what we're doing is just going to keep giving us the same, and the world.
How does in an education system, right? So how does, which is traditional, is not prone to change that easily. How do you come to that? And it's ironic because it is an education system that is teaching you how to be able to acquire this knowledge, to be able to make that.
Yeah.
How do you come to that realization for those running the education system, whether it's school a private school, let's say a convent school?
I don't know. I think this is very much down to the individual. And then once somebody realizes, it takes traction. So I don't know. So if we go back in history, the ancient Greeks, they don't have a word for the word blue.
Blue?
They don't have a word for it. Go figure that.
The Greeks. And they had this beautiful blue ocean and
the Mediterranean and lapis lazuli and all sorts. They had various shades of purple. They didn't have a concept of blue. And so psychologists and linguists are arguing and having this discussion. Did blue exist? At what point did the colour blue exist? Did we start to see it first and name it and then everyone else see it? And where I'm going with this is, when will that person, will it be someone wakes up in the morning and says, hey, do you know what? This isn't right. And then suddenly someone else goes and says, why didn't I see that before? You're right, it's not right.
No, because because I think COVID was one example of when we were jolted into change, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the schools here were backward when it came to technology, right? Technology was taught as a subject, right? Exactly like you said, like, let's teach AI as a subject. Like, oh, let's teach technology. No, you can't teach.
Use it.
Use it. Right? So then suddenly COVID happens and they're like, wait, this technology thing that we were teaching that doesn't work. You know what? Let's go to Google Classroom. And now suddenly you're using it. Right? So that was forced. The pandemic forced it. Do we need someone to force a world situation to be able to force this AI-driven change, or...
I think it's, and that's why I'm sort of happy. I think AI is driving it forwards. It's doing it so quickly now that we don't have a choice but to accept that the ideals that we cling to, you know, because we all went to university. We all had to learn the times table in year 4 and 5, you know, your 6 times table memorizing. We all had to do that. Damn it, my kids are going to do it as well. But now we're realizing they just don't need that. And I think the more that AI evolves, the more realization is that the knowledge, it's important, but it's no longer the be all and end all. And that is happening. If I was here without AI, we'd be looking at a Cambridge system that would be very static, and people would think I'm crazy if I talk this stuff. The very fact we can talk about creativity, collaboration, confidence, communication, the very fact that we can talk about those is now a recognition that actually they're important, because AI has told us that. And we're recognizing it, and employers are starting to say, oh, yeah, brilliant, you know that. Can you work with these 4 guys to get that? You can't work with them. The PhD is no good to me then. And so the world is having forced that change, and hopefully there will be schools that will roll their sleeves up and say, do you know what? We're going to lead this. But examining bodies, we live in a commercial world. Examining bodies also understand this. So, for example, Cambridge have introduced the ARQ, which gets the points as an A level. It's like an A level, but it's in research. Pearson Edexcel have introduced an ERQ AI. So you do the research purely with AI and you assess AI. So people are changing. Exam boards are changing to meet that need. The rote learning is changing. The pace of change, that's an issue for others, I think, to push through. But it is happening. We are seeing it. I'm seeing Cambridge talk about redesigning exam papers. We're seeing Pearson redesign exam papers. They're going online with exam papers. Things are starting to adjust. But for someone like myself, they're adjusting, but it's still that one colour spectrum. We're still not stepping back quite yet and going, there's a full colour here.
Interesting. And one last thing that I want to add into this, right? So we've spoken a lot about the curriculum. So we've spoken about the teacher that delivers the education. We've spoken about the systems of education. Within the systems, we've talked about the change that needs to come into place, the role AI needs to play. Rather than it being taught, it should be used. Let's now leave this aside. there is a component of sports, right? Or the non-curriculum side of the
Yeah.
education, right? How, does that need correction and evolution, or is that a part of all of this change that we're talking about? Because sports contributes to the self, right? The to be component, right?
Yeah.
And it also does the community aspect of it.
And the collaboration.
And the collaboration. So
decision making.
And the decision, so all of those things are done in that. Can that not be used? Can sports not be the driver for a lot of this change? The easy driver?
Yeah. Well, certainly I would say that. Certainly. And those that know me and the work I'm doing at my school would say, oh, look, he's just worried about sport. But if they understood how my brain was working, what I'm using is sport as a manipulative tool to get across that our kids all need to learn to communicate better. They need planning better. They're going to have to run their clubs. They need to make their decisions. So you're exactly right. But also we have to recognize that there are some people that are just turned off with sport, which is why we need the chess or debating club or a drama club or a society that looks at poetry. It's all similar. It's all similar. It's them being involved in developing these. I'm not going to call them extracurricular. I would say they're developing these co-curricular activities.
And I think that was one of the strengths of the Karachi Grammar School, is that it gave you a lot of options to develop your co-curricular skills.
Yeah.
Whether it was drama or chess or tennis, you ran the club, you organized everything yourself, you did it in the school. And so it did give you that autonomy for decision making, right? Those micro decisions you're taking place outside of the classroom. So fine, you're being tested for knowledge that is useless in today's day and age. But guess what? Outside of the class, you did have sort of the sports, the extracurriculars. Drama was a big thing. I remember, and drama actually creates a core skill of being able to communicate effectively. That's number one, and do it in a large room. Without sort of freaking out, which most people could cite as their number one fear. So, yes, I think that school did it well, but do other schools do it in the Cambridge system? Because you're running schools out of homes in Pakistan. You don't have the big grounds. You don't have the space for a stage. You don't have the ability to deliver that. So what will they do?
There are many schools that are doing this. There are many schools that are doing it at different levels. I know schools that have got 200 students that are still pushing massively. I think people think of extracurricular. In our day, extracurricular was extra. I think nowadays, most educators realize the worth that's in it. Whether it's as an owner of a school, whether you're looking at it and thinking it's easy PR, it's easy marketing,
right, or
whether you're looking as an educator and going, this is a tool I can use to get the skills to my kids to deliver it. It's a delivery vehicle.
Right.
That I think most people recognize that the co-curricular, extracurricular is hugely important.
Right.
And I think one of the things, obviously I haven't talked much about our own school, but one of the things I think I've seen at KGS is in the last year, there has been a change to how people view it. And perhaps when I first arrived, there was academics, which are always important. And then there was this extracurricular stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas most teachers now are going, okay, it's not a 90%, 10%. Actually, it's more of a 60-40. And as we progress down that road, it'll become a 50-50.
Right. That makes sense.
And it is changing it, but it's not just in our schools. There's a number of schools within Pakistan that I've visited that have very strong extracurricular programs. Most schools are putting on their own MUMs now.
Yeah.
I was at Link School. I watched Mamma Mia, their show. Most schools, even though they're small, are delivering for the extracurricular. And for universities, it's going to become even more important.
Where do you see kids moving, specifically in Pakistan? Where do you see the kids now going with a couple of things that are taking place, right? So economically, financially, it's becoming more and more difficult for people to go abroad and study abroad, right? It doesn't matter which country, it's expensive. Then we're seeing sort of what's happening in the US with the visas and all of that. So there's a second part to that. Where do you see the higher education demand? How do you see that being fulfilled in the near future? Do you see a shift?
That's it. That's a huge podcast all on its own.
Yeah.
Just there. It's a massive subject. And it's, again, I've said I'm really excited to be in Pakistan, and there is a reason for that. And it's, Our kids at our school traditionally look to America, look to UK, some Europe. That has grown, but I see a massive reduction. But I'm also now going to ask, well, why? You know, I get it for your CV if you want to go to Harvard. I get it. It looks awesome on your CV, and it might open some doors because of the network that you've been able to develop. But hang on a minute. Why are you going to Harvard? Name me the best professor of physics.
It's only the network.
And boom, I can. So for the learning and the teaching, so it becomes just the network. So
Actually, I would say there's two parts. Number one is the network. Number two is the independence that, let's say, going to a foreign college gives you. Because let's say you go to a college here, the likelihood of where would you end up, right? You'd end up at an IBA or a LUMS or a Habib University or an IOBM or Zabist or whatever, right? But you're living at home.
Yeah.
You know,
but you don't have to. You don't have to. So if you were a scientist and a bit of an entrepreneur, so you've got the knowledge, specific skills, but also you've got a huge amount of creativity and communication skills.
Right.
Go to NUST.
Right.
Don't even give it a second thought. Get up to NUST. You're going to live out of home because you're up in Islamabad.
Yeah.
So you're away from your family. Close enough. Family is really important. So you can't negate that either. If you're over in the States, you're too far away to solve problems or to get help.
Right.
So you're in Islamabad, you're far enough away from mum and dad to have a breathing space, but close enough to pop back. So you've got your freedom, you've got your independence, you're living in holes, you're making decisions. So you've got that. You've got a university that's ranked, I think might even have that. Have I got a NUST? Yeah, so you're ranked 353rd in the world, NUST. Right, there's approximately 50,000 universities in the world.
that's pretty good then.
That's pretty good. You know, you're going to one of the better ones. You come out of university at NUST. They've got half of their campus. It's not half. I'm exaggerating and being dramatic.
It's huge. I went there.
But it is huge. They've got, let's say, a good 20% of their campus that is just for laboratories and offices for startups. So if you've got creativity and an idea in science and you've studied, they'll give you this space for free for your year. And you've got access to experts that you can pull in. And you've got resources that you can pull in that make your dream happen. And there's some amazing startups going on there. Air University does something very similar up in Islamabad. So if you're into tech, and let's face it, that the world we live in today, sadly, arms and tech is right up there. Cybersecurity is right up there. It's the world we live in. Let me get the numbers. So Air University is ranked 601st. 50,000 and they're ranked 601st. Where do governments buy their drones from when the war breaks out? They go to Turkey. They go to Iran. They come to Pakistan. They're not going to MIT for drones. They're coming here. So where should you study if as a career you want to be at the top of the tech and you're an entrepreneur that's going to make a good company? Well, go to Air Uni then. But that's tech and science. There are other examples here like IVS, like LUMS. There's lots of, not all of them, but there's probably 8 or 9 universities within Pakistan that are in the top,
That's
top 1,000 of 50,000. But this is data, and I think Pakistan is very like the British. We like to put ourselves down. The British, when you look at the Olympics, we're not going to win. And that's what the British say. World Cup. Oh God, we're not going to win. That's the British mentality. And Pakistan's a bit similar. It's like you've got these universities, they're brilliant. No, we haven't. They're all corrupt. They're rubbish. And it's like, no, hang on a minute. Have you been to the Aga Khan University and seen their medical setup? I've been to the University of Florida. I've been to the University of the South Americas. I've been to the University of North Carolina specifically to see their medical facilities. At the Aga Khan, you've got a suite, a whole floor of technology and AI, and it's these they're like dummies, mannequins, but they're human. And they can be programmed to cry and make sounds, and they can be programmed to change their So it's a fully immersive, sorry, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know the tech, but it's a fully immersive training experience. You've got 2 floors of those at the Aga Khan in Karachi.
Wow.
When I visited the University of the Sud Americas in Santiago, they had 2 labs, two rooms. You got 2 floors up at the Aga Khan. When I visited North Carolina, we didn't have any. You know, it was more basic than that. And it's like, you've got 2 floors. So where are you going? Where are you going to go for university?
So the argument you're making, which makes sense, is unless you're going to the number one, like the number 1 or the top 10, don't bother, because we've got some good stuff right here.
If you're going to go to the top 10, go to the top 10. But what's the difference between the top 100 and the top 300?
Nothing.
What's the difference between the top 500 and the top 1,000? It's nothing. There's 50,000 universities.
Yeah.
The top really is the top. And you have 8 or 9 institutions here that have that. So my advice for any student would be go and have your freedom. If you're in Karachi, go to Islamabad. If you're in Lahore, come to Karachi. Have your freedom, develop your skills, get your degree, and then you've been near your family, and family is important. Go and do your masters for 1 year in Harvard, Massachusetts, Cambridge, Oxford. Go and do your masters. Go and have that international experience and have that network and have that name on your CV. But go there with your NUST chemical engineering degree because it's hugely valuable.
Right.
If that's what you want to do. But as I said, there was another one, and you'll have to forgive my pronunciation for it. Qaid-i-Azam.
Yeah, Qaid-i-Azam.
Right, they're ranked 300th.
There's even GIK, Ghulam
Yeah, that's right. But I couldn't find a ranking for them. So there's some that are ranked really highly, consistently across all of them. So yeah, go to Harvard.
Yeah.
or not, because if you're a genius at cyber warfare.
This is the place to be.
Wherever you're going to be, you're going to be a genius. If you're brilliant in history and archaeology, okay. If Pakistan doesn't have somewhere for you, definitely get over to Oxford. Got it. But if we do have somewhere, then go there, because if you're a genius, you're a genius. It's the best rise, and there is opportunities here now. Anyway, it's an exciting time to be in Pakistan.
You sold me on NUST. I never looked at NUST the same way, but you made a very logical argument. And the other thing that is important to consider, you don't put a financial burden on the family.
Yeah.
If some people can afford it, but some people really, for kids' education, go above and beyond and take on a lot of stress and burden and whatever. There's debt that you take on. Let's say you take loans, unless you get a scholarship or a grant or something.
Yeah.
I appreciate. Go ahead.
So just one point, because we always look at MIT and Oxford and Cambridge. We always look out.
Right.
English do it, Pakistanis do it. We're no good, they're better. It's what we do. But the rest of the world isn't thinking like that. So if you look at NUST, they've got the United Nations Peacekeeping Centre there as part of the university. The rest of the world is sending their very cream of the crop up to Islamabad to be part of the United, to get trained. So the rest of the university going, if my career is in international relations and international security and defence, I want to study at NUST in the UN centre, because the UN have opened up a centre there. Wow. The stuff that they had there that I saw, the training. So some guy over at NUST in the tech had developed these goggles that monitor your eyes. And where your eyes move, the science says it's your emotions. He was showing me them to say, look, we could train teachers, because when they're getting overly emotional or conflictive, we can identify that, we can measure it, and then they know they're doing it. The reason he had that tech is because they use it in the UN to train up their negotiators and peacekeepers.
Wow.
They put them through scenarios where he's on, and he goes, you're getting quite aggressive. That's too conflictive.
Yeah.
Oh, you're being too passive there.
Wow.
So you're learning how to use in the tech.
Right.
People across the world are coming here for that.
That's crazy.
But to keep applying and go to MIT, definitely. But it's an exciting world, and things are changing. The old world isn't what it was anymore.
Yeah, that's true. No, this is interesting. It's fascinating, and I hope that the kind of changes or adjustments, so I wouldn't call them changes, I think the kind of adjustments we need to make keeping the technology transition that's taking place around us. I hope that those adjustments happen quickly, because I think if we don't adjust soon enough, there's this generation of student that is going to just suddenly see a very different world in 3 years, and then they're going to have to play catch up.
Yeah.
You know? Thanks a lot. I really enjoyed this conversation. You've definitely given me a topic for a second version of this podcast on the higher education side, which we haven't even touched now.
And the great work that the HEC is trying to do to get all this going.
So maybe we'll do that in a second one, but I appreciate the time, and I love this passion and the spirit that you're bringing to the role, and I wish you all the best in your time with the school.
Yeah, thank you for being here. And for the invite. It's been interesting. I love these sort of conversations because you get to reflect on your own thoughts, but also hear someone else's take on your thoughts, which then changes them slightly.
Yeah, that's true. And this was a good topic to discuss. It's very relevant. All right. Thank you for tuning into DigiTales. Like, subscribe, comment below, and we will keep more interesting guests coming. Bye-bye.